normally I usually do a review on a new game that I finally got around to playing, and honestly, my reviews are usually pretty late as I don't get early access to review copies from the developers. I mean, hello, a new content creator with 13k subs isn't exactly that appealing to publishers. So my reviews on this channel don't turn out to do as well as ranking videos. But after playing Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, I've decided I want to try something slightly different with this game. I mean, let's be real, you guys have probably already seen a ton of different reviews on this game, most of which are probably pretty negative. So this is what we're going to do today instead. Immediately after following this introduction, I'll be diving into heavy spoiler territory as I discuss everything about this game. If you couldn't tell from the title of today's video, my thoughts on this game as a whole are also pretty negative. So expect me to tear this game apart in just about every single way. With that being said, it's important to note that we'll be covering spoilers from Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. That means story spoilers, boss fights, and the future of this live service game. So take this as your warning now before we get started. Anyway, this is Nerd Space Games with everything wrong with Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. Let's get it. Let's start with the gameplay. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is a 4-player looter shooter that uses the DC IP to help it appeal to more people. Unfortunately, a lot of the decisions relating to the gameplay mechanics sort of feel like a mixture of a 10-year-old game with free-to-play live service traits. That really shouldn't be too much of a surprise though to gamers that have been keeping up to date on information with this game considering how long Suicide Squad has been in the works. Still, I don't think any of us were prepared for Rocksteady, the famous developers that brought us the Arkham games, to fuck up this badly. Whereas the Arkham games focus on melee, stealth, and gadgets, Suicide Squad focuses primarily on running and gunning. And sure, you have a melee attack, but the clunkiness of it is completely unbearable when you compare it to the predecessor of Suicide Squad. Not to mention, traveling around Metropolis is a massive pain thanks to the god-awful traversal methods that some of the characters use. While Deadshot is pretty simple and is definitely the go-to character for traveling around the map, Harley Quinn's grapple hook and King Shark's leaping abilities are rough to use and hard to navigate. To be completely honest, I don't even really understand why they just didn't give every single character a jetpack at this point, because outside of a few minor tweaks, each character felt similar to play as anyways. Which brings me to my next issue with the gameplay. The Suicide Squad already made a major mistake when selecting the members of the team. Instead of pulling together unique characters with unique abilities, they decided to go with the B team of Suicide characters. Obviously, Harley Quinn made a lot of sense due to her recent rise in popularity thanks to both Margot Robbie and the animated Harley Quinn show. But to bring us characters like Boomerang and Deadshot over someone like Deathstroke didn't make a lot of sense to me. With that being said, the 4 villains chosen could still feel different enough if Rocksteady handled it correctly. For example, King Shark seemed like the perfect melee-focused character with traits of a tank. Unfortunately, Rocksteady didn't make good use of his abilities at all. Instead, they give each character a gun and send them on their way. Boomer's use of his signature weapon was a nice touch, but even then, it still lacked creativity. You have different iconic villains, each with unique traits and abilities at their disposal, but instead of using those abilities to help make each character feel different, other than how they move around the city, you decide to play it safe and be lazy by just making them all feel exactly the same for the most part. Because of this, I felt no need to try different characters throughout the game, and ultimately, I went with the character that annoyed me the least with their awkward jokes. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is a live service game, and the most important element of a live service game is that it does enough to make the experience fun and exciting and never boring and repetitive. Unfortunately, Rocksteady must have missed that memo. Starting with the enemies. With a title like Kill the Justice League, you would imagine a major part of the game focusing on fighting members of the Justice League. Unfortunately, at least 90% of the time, you're actually fighting against the same brainiac minions over and over again, but maybe with a different color or a different shade depending on how far into the game you are. For example, early in the game you face off against some choppers. Then, after defeating Green Lantern, you'll come face to face with green choppers that have Green Lantern's shield around them. Oh, fancy. Same thing after you defeat Flash. Beating him will lead to the same enemies that you have been facing throughout the entire game, but now they can move around faster and they have a nice little red glow to them. Oh, Rocksteady, you clever bastards, you. Listen, I get it. It's not like the game could have forced you to fight the Justice League throughout the entire game. You obviously needed minions to fight against, but why? why do you only get to fight against 4 members? Why not bring Cyborg, Martian Manhunter, or other heroes into the mix? Hell, when you went into the Batcave, it was teased that he killed Robin and maybe even the rest of the Bat family. If this was indeed the case, would it not have made more sense for them to have been taken over by Brainiac as well? And then it could have been like more enemies for TSX to face off against? I mean, one thing that was really lacking in the game was boss fights. Other than 4 heroes and a variation of Brainiac which uses the same abilities as one of the 4 heroes, there were no major or mini bosses unless you count shooting purple pimples off of a giant gun. And even if they didn't want to include other heroes because they might be saving them for the future seasons of the game, they at least could have created some original bosses using Brainiac's tech. Hell, you could have even made us face off against each member twice to make it feel like there were more bosses in the game. Because I'll be honest, outside of the cutscenes, there was very little interaction with most of the members. Superman didn't even appear in the game until it was like almost over, and Batman spent most of his time talking trash to us over the radio. But if you were thinking that the enemies are the only reason why the game felt repetitive, well, that's just a small part of it. I could get over with fighting the same enemies over and over throughout the game. Hell, I've done it plenty of times before in previous games. The main issue with how boring and repetitive the game is comes from the missions. I swear, once you've played about the first 20% of the game, then you've encountered just about every single type of mission there is in the game. Outside of killing the Justice League, of course. Here, I'll give you a quick preview. First, you protect a bus. Then you protect a car carrying Batman. Then you'll protect another vehicle until it gets beamed up by Brainiac's ship. All of them play exactly the same, and each of those moments I just mentioned are in completely different parts of the game, meaning you'll repeat the same missions over and over again. I would say that about 3/4 of the game will be you doing one of 3 things: following a tracker, protecting a vehicle, or killing enemies in a specific area so that you can remove the shields so that you can destroy a specific structure. Seriously, that's a majority of the missions that you'll be doing. The only things that'll change will be why you are doing what you're doing and the object of interest in the mission. That's it. The main selling point and marketing of Suicide Squad, of course, was in its name, Kill the Justice League. From the moment this concept was announced and the villains on the team were revealed, the game was met with criticism immediately from the fans of DC. That's primarily because it's kind of unbelievable that a band of mercenaries with guns would be able to defeat the likes of Superman and Flash. Still, it's not completely out of the question depending on how the story plays out. There's plenty of explanations that could help the players accept that the team would be able to defeat each member, and in some cases, the explanation that Rocksteady went with was a little more understandable as the squad primarily used weaknesses that Batman himself developed for each member of the Justice League. However, in some circumstances, we're still left confused and unable to understand how they managed to beat each member and even one of the Brainiacs, the individual that somehow beat the entire Justice League. On top of that, there were some uncharacteristic fighting styles used by some of the League members, most notably with Batman's boss fight. Still, that could also somewhat be explained away by blaming Brainiac's influence over them, which ultimately changed them. We kind of got a hint of that with Superman's weakness changing from kryptonite to gold kryptonite, but even with some really far-fetched explanations, there are still some plot holes that can't be explained away. For example, how the hell did the team defeat Batman, probably the smartest man alive? I mean, he openly said that he has no weakness and that it'll take teamwork to defeat him, but somehow TSX succeeded whereas the Batman family failed. Also, how did the team defeat Brainiac? Like, fine, obviously the Suicide Squad has used weaknesses that Batman had discovered to defeat each member of the Justice League. But let's not forget one major plot hole. Green Lantern, Superman, and Batman were all defeated by Brainiac. We don't know how, but they ultimately were turned with Flash to follow them later on. So how exactly did a team of riffraff with guns, who are some of the dumbest villains in the universe, defeat a variation of Brainiac? I mean, sure, he used Flash's power, so maybe he was weak to the same device that they used against Flash, but ultimately Brainiac should have known this. He's far more intelligent than them, and he managed to catch Green Lantern, Superman, and Batman and change them over to his side without the use of these powers. So logically, this makes no sense at all for him to use this ability that he knows TSX is aware of and its weakness. Moving away from plot holes though, let's take a look at the boss fights against the Justice League. Again, this was the main selling point of the game, an opportunity to face off against the world's greatest superheroes. So obviously the boss fights against each member would need to be massive. They would need to be some truly incredible encounters if they wanted to keep players invested with this live service game. Unfortunately, it was nowhere near close to good. Most of the fights were mediocre at best, with some being downright awful. Sure, Green Lantern's fight was actually pretty cool, and I'll give the game props for what it did right. But Flash and Superman lacked creativity in their fights, and Batman got the worst treatment of them all. Instead of facing off against the Batman, it felt more like we were facing off against Scarecrow. That's because Batman's boss fight started with him releasing the fear toxin in the Batcave to infect the Suicide Squad, after which you fight a giant Batman monster, which in my opinion is a complete disservice to the character. Batman might be evil now, but as far as I'm concerned, he's still the Batman. So we should have fought the Batman, not Bruce Wayne using Scarecrow's toxins. He didn't even use any of his gadgets, his intelligence, or combat. Nope, he used Scarecrow's abilities. That's it. It was easily the worst fight of the game, and straight up it pisses me off that they thought this was a great way to handle this boss fight. What the hell were you thinking, Rocksteady? Overall, none of the superheroes felt powerful. The fights were underwhelming despite the game focusing on building up the anticipation of taking them down. And even if the fights were grand because of the lack of heroes to face off against and the lack of time spent actually fighting them, the game feels more like killing the Justice League was a side story, not the main part of Suicide Squad. One of the most redeeming traits of the Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, comes from the performance of each of the voice actors. Obviously, the late Kevin Conroy was absolutely stunning. Tara Strong as Harley Quinn was perfect casting. And even Deborah Wilson is becoming one of the best video game voice actors thanks to her performance as Seer in the Jedi games and now the infamous Amanda Waller in Suicide Squad. The casting and acting from the voices of just about every character in this game are absolutely superb. Unfortunately, they were given some pretty awful material to work with. As I mentioned earlier, the story of Kill the Justice League wasn't the greatest. With that being said, the concept is something that wouldn't have been all bad, and with a stunning cast like this one, it definitely could have been redeemed if the script was better. Sadly, the dialogue throughout the game was borderline cringy in just about every single cutscene, and the main characters, the members of TSX, were completely unlikable. And yeah, I know it was going to be tough to get us to like the members of the Suicide Squad when the game was focusing on a group of supervillains murdering some of the greatest superheroes of all time. Still, there were plenty of opportunities throughout the story that offered redeeming traits to these villains. For example, the circumstances around the death of Flash. Captain Boomerang had a vendetta against Flash. And while the heroes had to be killed because, that is the name of the game, there could have been more remorse or redemption from these characters during these moments. Instead, the game chose to make a joke out of each beloved character's death. Despite Flash saving the lives of the Suicide Squad earlier in the game, after killing Flash, Boomer decides that a perfect way to thank him for his sacrifice is by pissing on his dead body. Great. Haha, very funny, Boomer. In fact, the only character that seemed to show some redeeming traits is Harley Quinn due to her respect for Wonder Woman. Although that's kind of ruined when she kills Batman. Granted, I'm not saying that the game should have shied away from her killing Batman, but maybe added a little more remorse or some sort of appreciation or something to help redeem her character after murdering an iconic character like Batman. To be completely honest, I probably could have ignored this massive push for us to dislike the main characters if it wasn't for one other issue with the script. The cringe. Like I said earlier, the dialogue in this game is extremely cringy to the point that I was seriously getting annoyed with each joke that the squad made throughout the game. Seriously, none of the jokes landed, and when I say none of them, I honestly mean that. I didn't laugh a single time throughout this entire game, despite it obviously taking every single opportunity to try to make me laugh. You kill Flash? Let's piss on him. Haha, very funny. You kill Green Lantern? How about we remind you of how dumb King Shark is? The game isn't funny at all, and to make things even worse, it avoids any drama by covering it up with more awful attempts at comedy. I even based my character selection off who annoyed me the least, which is why I went with Harley Quinn. But honestly, even her lines were bad and cringy. Again, not the fault of the voice actors at all. I seriously believe that the casting was spot on here. Just wish that the jokes landed, the story took some moments to slightly redeem the main characters, and that the writers didn't take every single opportunity to try to force a laugh, even during dramatic moments throughout the story. Because Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is a live service game, it means that this game is intended to last for who knows how long, maybe a few years, maybe only a few months if the game doesn't get enough attention. Unfortunately, because it's a live service game, it means that the ending of this game isn't exactly an ending. Actually, it's a setup for the seasons to come. The story of Suicide Squad ends with the team taking down one of 13 Brainiacs scattered throughout the multiverse. Judging by how the final fight went down, it seems like each version of Brainiac will use abilities acquired from different DC superheroes. The final fight of this game used Flash's abilities. Unfortunately, this is extremely bad news because it means that the cycle will continue to repeat itself over and over again for at least 12 more times. Warner Brothers, Rocksteady, fuck you. You literally made us pay $70 for a live service game that is clearly about to charge players a lot more money to get the full story of the game here. And from here, I would expect that each time a Brainiac fight is released, that the players will need to acquire those green Luthor coins or whatever they're called that was needed to fight the first Brainiac. You'll need to do all that again. How do you acquire that? Well, I expect that there'll be a lot of fucking grinding, and you know damn well that Rocksteady is going to offer a chance to skip that grind for your money. You know, a game that you paid $70 for is now going to request that you pay even more money to eventually get to the end of the story for the game that you paid for. Yeah, go to hell, Rocksteady. I don't know what happened to you. I really don't. Whether this is Warner Brothers getting their filthy hands on you or if this was all you. Either way, this is complete bullshit. Let's not forget all the different microtransactions that are already in the game. Sure, most of them are cosmetics, but when you think about the fact that this isn't a free-to-play game, it kind of pisses you off now, doesn't it? Like, if this game was free-to-play, then I could forgive the overcharged DLC. I could forgive the microtransactions. Hell, I could even forgive the future direction of this game that I'm willing to bet is going to be full of new squad mates for money and a ton of grinding to the point where they'll offer ways to skip that grind for money. But not when you sons of bitches decided to charge $70 for this game. Oh, and for those of you that are curious, this game is easily a 3 out of 10 for me. Sure, the cutscenes are awesome and the performances from the voice actors are superb, but that doesn't change the fact that this game plays like a PlayStation 3 game with microtransactions and grinding elements that rivals some free-to-play games, and it's charging a full price of $70. Rocksteady, you're honestly dead to me. You have gone to the dark side. Okay, but rant over. Anyway, for those of you guys that stuck with me all the way throughout this video, I appreciate you. And I want your honest opinions. Do you like this style of videos over my traditional reviews? Would you like to see me do more spoiler discussions instead of a spoiler-free review, since you guys probably see that all the time anyway? Hit up the comments and let me know down below. But thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like on today's video. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next episode of Nerd Space Games. Take care.